Do you know what Athens, Barcelona, Berlin, New York, Singapore, and Copenhagen have in common? They are some of the 20 so-called 3.0 cities, smart, sustainable, and global leaders in digitalization. Learn from the latest smart solution projects in Istanbul, Cape Town, Ho Chi Minh City, Toronto, and many other cities around the world. Hop on this great wave of technological innovations and seize new business opportunities.
And this is us. Good evening, and I'm Daniel, your friendly, more or less host for the next 2 hours. Very much looking forward to having two amazing panels. And the first panel we're going to have tonight is, as just early on announced, going to be on blue chips, a gold mine for learning and business opportunities. To be honest, I don't know if they are. However, I do know that we have a host for our panel who's going to try and find out if it's the truth or not. And I'm very much looking forward to handing over the stage into good hands to Andras Tori. And he's done it all, right? You're a successful entrepreneur, computer enthusiast, investor, mentor, co-founder, technical director, and a million other things. Andras, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Good man. Thank you very much. How would you introduce yourself if bars were open and someone would say, hey, Andras, so what do you do?
I write a bit of code and try to make other people write a bit of code.
That sounds absolutely charming. Now, we know that you can write a bit of code. Let's see how you can host panels. Andras, the panel is yours. Enjoy yourself and see you later. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. So welcome to the panel about learning from, really the title is quite bombastic, but I think our panel is going to be about learning from big companies, either working in them in previous parts of our careers or working with them as our customers, our partners, etc. We have an interesting panel today. We all know each other, so I think we will simply use our first names. And I would like us, for starters, to briefly introduce each other. So we will know what our backgrounds are, and then we will start with the topics. So maybe we start with Andy Woodler.
Thanks. I've been around in the ad technology space for about 15 years. Spent most of my time at a number of different challenger startups, always working primarily with a lot of bigger companies. And then I did spend about a year and a half at Yahoo, kind of middle of my career, so about 7-8 years ago, right around the time when Marissa Mayer joined the company. So there's some interesting things happened when I was there, and and I've certainly had some fun experiences working with bigger companies as a smaller company. So it's me interested to chat about this.
Okay, thanks. Dusan Omercevic.
Yeah, I used to work in many startups, so Naidi and Zemanta, to name a few. 5 years ago, I started my own startup called Clean Shelf that was acquired 2 months ago by German startup LinaX, where I'm now VP of product for SaaS intelligence product.
Thank you. And Dilpesh Parmar.
Great to get. Nice to be on this panel, firstly. My background is also on the ad tech space. Andy and I are actually a co-founder of our current company called Equus. I've been working in the publisher space, mostly in-app publisher space. Having worked with some of the, I would say blue chip companies in the mobile space, the mobile app space. And I manage currently the product at Equus. I'm also invested in a number of ad tech companies and some gaming companies. So yeah, I like to be, I'm quite familiar with the ad tech space and the gaming space.
Okay, so let's simply go right into the question, right? If you were 10 years back from now, 10 years younger, and you had a choice of directly starting a startup, or maybe even directly out of college or somewhere, or going through the path of working for a more established company and going from there. Which one would you choose and why?
Like I said, most of my career has been in startups. I started my ad tech career I was in recruitment in Australia, and I got poached by a small ad network startup down there. And so I kind of grew into my career all through startups. And so when I actually went to Yahoo, probably 7 years into kind of my ad tech career, it was an interesting time to be there, but I'll be honest, I got bored. Big companies, the way that I've seen them is that they kind of keep you in a silo. And so I think that, we're
You got bored, but did you learn anything?
Yeah, I did learn. And that's what I mean. I think that I learned that people wearing different hats is a good thing. And I think that's what I've always enjoyed about startups. So I think it was watching people trying to sort of maneuver through the business and a very large business at that point. You could see frustration with people trying to help other areas, because it was always like, stay within your lane, right? Because there's thousands of people in your business and you do this, you do that. And I think that was detrimental in some things that I saw there in terms of some acquisitions they made and how hard it was for them to combine companies. That was right when they bought that social networking site that's not even around anymore. What was that one called? No.
Tumblr?
Thank you. Yes, Tumblr. Yeah. That was when they bought that for like $1 billion, and
that was a big win.
It went nowhere. They just couldn't integrate it properly. So, but yeah, I think for me, I would always go to startups. I think it's really fun and exciting to be in a startup.
Okay, so from you, it's kind of a bit of waste of time to kind of season yourself first in a big company and then find a problem and go into startup.
I don't know if it's a waste of time, but I think that I'm happy with the route I took.
Okay, let's go on. Dusan, how would you do it if you went at it again?
Yeah, I had very varied experience there. So I worked for bigger companies. I worked in academia. I worked as partner for bigger companies, and the experience has been very kind of varied. So, for example, academia is a very interesting beast because it's in principle big, but the unit you are working on is typically a very small. So the team that you are working on is actually quite small and homogeneous, while kind of the larger university is basically not very involved in what you do. So it's more kind of soft grouping of teams. So the experience there was super positive because our team had great people on the team. We were doing very exciting projects, collaborated with lots of different institutions. So having this background of large university was actually quite helpful. On the other end, where I worked for the Slovenian Highway Administration as external consultant, yeah, that's not something that, so it was a good money, but that's basically it. I would never want to work for that company, because that's a very special type of people are working there. So I don't see working in such organization.
Okay. Dilpesh, if you had to choose your path again, how would it be?
I think it's more for me. I think it'd be which company would I work for, right? And if I look 10 years back, because I think there are many blue chip companies now, which offer you the path where you can try different things within the organization, right? So I would definitely choose again, to work for a bigger company. I did work for a bigger company when I started my career. It did give me the ability, the focus, right? So one of the things that, yes, you're siloed into a specific job or role, but at the same time, you do have you learn how to focus on things, right? And you start to ignore some of the noise outside, which is hard, as you know, and in any startup, is to be focused, right? It's hard because there's so many things that gets thrown your way. I think bigger companies help you kind of achieve that to some degree. At the same time, I would say a lot of the bigger companies nowadays are much different to maybe 10, 15 years ago, where you can try different things, right? You look at Amazon, for example, right? They encourage people to move around the inside the organization to try different things, if so there are advantages, of course, of working for bigger companies. Of course, the major disadvantage is that you're siloed into a specific role or a specific duty, which can be frustrating for some. It could be opportunity for others as well. But yeah, I would definitely choose going back to working for a bigger, larger company.
Okay, let's focus on one thing here, because I think this was one of the reasons for this specific panel. Like the opportunity to identify a problem that maybe larger company in which you work has, but for various reasons cannot be solved within the company. And then you go out and solve that problem. Like at least a bit of your story, as far as I know it, with Outfit and with Aqueous, is that you basically have seen the industry in detail and identified those problems. Like, how does that happen? Are you on the lookout for this kind of unsolvable problems, or they just pop into your head? Or
Oh, I think so. You mentioned about Alpha 7 specifically. So I think when you're a small company, of course, you're nimble. You can do things. You can make decisions. You can try. You can fail. I think fail fast is very encouraged these days. In our industry, right? But I think it comes down to timing as well. So understanding the timing of when you think a product might actually be worth bringing into the market, right? One thing I've always learned is when people complain too much about something, that's probably the opportunity, right? So talk about like how Equus and the transition from Alpha 7 to Equus, it didn't happen overnight, right? I think I went to another company, a few companies before I jumped to this, because the timing wasn't there, and the market conditions probably didn't permit us to kind of So something that's maybe good now doesn't mean it's good next year, right? Because the opportunity might have been different. So I think it's important to understand like the timing is important, and also when you go into the market, right? So the transition is never like, hey, I've got an idea in working in a smaller company, or a bigger company, and I want to then start my own.
But sometimes startup stories sound exactly like that, but that's not how it happens, right?
I think that if you look at the path of like a startup or any career, it's all over the place, right? It's never like one a steep curve or a steep ladder, right? So it's never the case. And yeah, there are startups which have happened. Someone's joined a larger company, and within a couple of years or a year, they figure out this is actually something I want to pursue and build on, right? So it's very it's again, there's never a silver bullet in this space, right? I think the one thing is, of course, you have to be prepared for everything, right? Because if you, as a startup, you have to do everything gets thrown at you, right?
Okay, so maybe with the same question, we return to you, Dushan, where I kind of know that you did encounter the problem that you eventually founded the company on, partly while working at Zemanta. Maybe you can explain a bit more how that problem and ideation and realization came to be.
So if you are working in B2C space, you don't need to work in a company to experience the problems of your users. But if you are focused on B2B, having that first-hand experience, of course, it's essential. So in my case, it was experiencing the problem of managing SaaS at Zemanta, which got me thinking that there is a real problem in need of a solution there. So definitely, I could not start CleanChef if I would not have first-hand experience with working in a company like Zemanta at that time.
Okay. And Andy, like, did you keep a note of problems at Yahoo that you might someday solve on the market?
I think for me, that with the space that I was in a sales role with a new product they had. For me, it was more interesting to talk to, because we acquired a bunch of companies at that time when I was there, a bunch of different ad tech companies. And I knew a lot of people in those companies because just through the years, and it was interesting to listen to their frustration. And this wasn't really a new thing with Yahoo, which was, I think, made it even more frustrating at the time, because with Marissa Mayer coming in, everyone thought this was going to be the new CEO, who's going to just take it to the next level. And I think arguably she did, but the integration from, a smaller or whatever size startup to a bigger company, I think we've seen in ad tech in particular, a lot of stuff ups, right? A lot of acquisitions that didn't actually end up probably doing, I'm talking the bigger stuff like the Yahoo purchases, those kind of things that just didn't end up fitting the way they thought they would, right? And the Tumblr one was a great example where, Yahoo was a very brand sales focused company. They bought Tumblr with this huge audience of 1 billion, whatever it was. It was an insane amount of people on it. But there was also like this huge percentage of it that was porn, right? And so they knew that, but they bought it anyway. And then when they tried to integrate with the brand teams, the brand salespeople were like, I can't sell this. Well, how do you want me to sell this? That, Coke is worried about me putting this ad against something that's going to be an adult content, even though we have, clear blockers, right? And in the end, I think they just wrote off Tumblr maybe about a year ago or something like that, or sold it to somebody smaller for a couple $100 million or something. And it was interesting to watch a few of those kind of acquisitions, and hearing just my friends that were in the sales team going, well, I don't know if I'm gonna have my job anymore because I think I'm redundant anyway, right? And there's always that big company getting a smaller company, the overlap. That's always a hard part, and sales in particular, right? Because sales, sadly, are probably the easiest ones to lose when you acquire somebody. It's the developers and those kind of, I guess, more valuable. And I don't mean, I'm not disparaging myself, but more valuable when you bring somebody across, right? Is somebody who can code versus somebody who can sell. Usually the salesperson is the first ones to go.
Okay. You mentioned one interesting thing, that you met a lot of different people. Like, did that fact, the kind of leverage through knowing different networks from different startups, from different backgrounds, kind of help you later on? Did you maintain those contacts going forward?
Yeah, it's a good point. I will say, because I really enjoyed Yahoo. I mean, I'm 43. I grew up using Yahoo in the late 90s when they first started categorizing the web, right? So it was a very cool brand that I was happy that I worked there. And yeah, I've stayed in touch with quite a few people, and a lot of people, not surprisingly, have left and started their own businesses or become senior at other businesses. And it's funny how fast how many times you can come back across those people. And so I would definitely say that was a great part of that journey for me, was the amount of people you meet. Being at Yahoo, it was also meant that from a sales cycle, everyone that you needed to talk to wanted to talk to you, right? Because it's a huge audience. There was always brands that wanted to be there, versus like being in a startup and trying to sell into somebody who's like another person who I don't know, from a tiny startup. So it's nice to have the cachet of a Yahoo, or if you work for somebody big like that, right, where you can you get a meeting because you work for Yahoo. So I really enjoyed that part of it. It certainly took some of the sales and made it a little bit more fun, because people actually wanted to hear what you were selling.
Okay. On that note, one is kind of having the right contacts for future sales, but also, Dilpesh, when you were fundraising for Aquas, you got a lot of fundraising from your previous coworkers, basically.
Yeah, I think, just kind of re-emphasizing what Andy said, I think, when you start your career up and when you work for a big company, in the beginning, people know you because of the big company, right? And over time, you build your brand. Then you build, who Dilpesh Parmar is, and so on, right? So it's always the starting point is always when you work for a big companies. That's the advantage is your potential customers or your potential partners, they already know you, right? And as you said, that also helps you on the fundraise side, right? So of course, people who you worked with, a lot of VCs and a lot of angel investors, right, want to back people that know, right? And it's great when you have your former colleagues or former companies who want to invest, because they know you, right? They understand of course they understand the problem as well that you're trying to solve, hopefully. So it does help you in the fundraise, that it allows you to basically validate, it allows them to validate the team. I think that's the important thing. So it allows them to validate the team, and as I said, like on the potential customers or potential partners in the future, they already know you, right? And when you have something that's been backed by other companies that also work in the same space, it gives a lot of validation, right? I think Andy and I maintain this. Would we have done this maybe 2 years ago? Probably not. I think purely because we didn't have that those kind of backings, right? I think now we can see all our investors, and when people do actually open up our investor book and like say, oh then there's a sense of validation on top of what on top of people knowing us. We've been between Andy and I, we've been in the industry for almost 20 years combined, over 20 years combined, right? So yeah, it does definitely helps with your fundraise.
Okay. Just as a slight interruption, if our audience has questions for our speakers, please do leave them in the chat and we will get to them and speak about them. With that, maybe Dushan, how did that work for you? Like, did you also met your future investors while working in previous companies?
Yeah. So both my previous bosses, so at Zemanta and Naidi, both were very early investors. So that's definitely the case. So yeah, if you want to meet people with money to invest, then definitely bigger corporations are a good source. And additional benefit there is that all these people have a lot of kind of desires and often don't dare to start something on their own. So by being part of a startup, they realize some of these desires. So I heard many stories of kind of younger people getting into kind of a company and then getting support from older people who are kind of like to encourage them to go on an independent path.
Okay. Are you also already on the other side of this now, since you've formally exited?
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. So definitely, I hope that at LeanIX, a couple of my colleagues will start their own company at some point, and I will definitely be there supporting them.
So kind of paid forward concept. Okay. So we've spoken about how it is to work for a big company and to learn and then take those learnings or connections or even friends as investors. But what about working with those big companies? What are the traps that one can fall into?
So where do we start? There are so many.
Yeah. What I feel like one of the main ones that probably is ubiquitous across every industry when you're working with big companies is you're the startup, right? So you're eager and ready to move and can move fast. And most of the time, those companies that you're trying to work with don't move fast, right? They usually have some sort of process to get through or whatever that is. And, Dilpesh and I are running into that right now with a couple of the sort of larger ad network or ad suppliers in the world. And we're like ready to go, but we can't get them to move fast enough, right? I think I'm sure everyone who's worked with big companies has had some sort of frustration like that when you're a startup, right? Because we're all nimble, as Dilpesh said, and ready to go. And we've got a process, and it gets frustrating, that's for sure.
So what are the tricks for speeding up that process? In old days, I don't know, you took people out for a dinner and discussed, like, how do you speed up the process of these large companies?
I think you just mentioned that. So that's I guess one of the drawbacks of having a startup in the last year and a half, right? We're going through this COVID pandemic, and that will be the first thing you do is you go out, you meet people at conferences, you let them, of course, they're ready, I think the trick is, or rather not, they already know you, right? I think it's a nudge they need. It's not really a nudge they need to say, okay, yes, let's just go for it, right? And let's do it. And it's very hard in current situation because you can't really meet people, right? You have to be online or have a Zoom call, and everyone's having a Zoom call at the same time, right? So everyone's has fatigue of Zoom calls. But yeah, you're right that one of the ways to do it is to meet people, kind of. I think the other way to also kind of understand is let them, another trick to use is understand, let them give you the timeline, right? And you can of course gently nudge them towards your timelines. But I think let them give the timeline. So hey, are you going to be ready in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? Let them give them the timeline. So it feels like they're in control of the decision making. But in theory, you're always kind of gently nudging them to kind of be sooner than later, right? And also, I think it's also understanding what are the processes internally, right? I think, as Andy mentioned, there's big, large processes, but most of the time we actually ignore the fact that what the process or the decision making might be. So you start backwards. You see, if you know that the decision make can be 3 months, you start 3 months earlier, right? Not a month early, right? So again, it's time to understand what actually motivates and what is behind that motivation to get your kind of your product through, and understanding the process behind that motivation as well. I think that can certainly help.
So how does one go at mapping this process? Like, does just the first person tell you, oh, the decisioning will look like this, or you put out a big map in the office and start painting everybody that will participate?
Well, that's where your connections come, true, right? So once you have good connections, you can ask either your advisors, if they know someone there, so you can understand who's actually the decision. I think that the key is always, are you talking to a decision maker or are you talking to someone who's just taking orders, right? And once you map that out, like who's actually the decision maker, I think that then you can make other, like, yes, there isn't like a whiteboard there, every company and who is the order. I think that doesn't happen in reality. It's understanding who's the decision maker and how quickly can you get from A to B, right? And then and everyone in between. It's a process for sure, but over time, literally within within a couple of months or even sooner, you can actually understand, okay, who's actually the decision maker and who's the right person that you should be talking to get the deal done, right?
Yeah, you always need inside help.
Yes.
And here actually startups have quite often an advantage, because so imagine that you are, let's say, VP at one large company. When you come home, you don't tell to your wife, oh, I had this productive meeting with Oracle today. But if you get to know some really energizing founder of a very exciting new company, this is something that you can tell to your friends, to your wife. And actually, there are quite many people who are keen to have that excitement. And you can use that quite emotional way how to enter the company. And then that sponsor or coach is then helping you navigate the internal organization. And actually, he is the one selling your solution. You're just enabling that person to be successful at selling internally.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. Like, just being young and agile is sometimes exciting for people in those companies to work with, to partner, and it makes their lives not just on the kind of solving business problems, but as in making interesting stuff better. And through that, you could do more. That's interesting.
Yeah, it has also, it's a double-edged sword, because on the other hand, yeah, if you are buying something super business critical, then this is working against you.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, because your solution is unproven. So many things can go wrong, and you can potentially will not exist in a couple of years. And when somebody is deciding on a vendor, they are risking their career. So I'm always saying that enterprise software is about selling promotions. But if you blew such relation, the person can get fired for choosing the wrong vendor.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
That's a good point. I think sometimes we as the vendor forget there is job security in decisions too, especially when you're at a big company, because those are the ones where it could change the outcome of something very, very big. And Dilepesh and I are running into this right now because we're in beta with our product. It's an enterprise level launch. It's not an MVP, but because we don't have clients yet, the bigger guys we're speaking to, so let's call them the blue chip gamers, companies that are either publicly listed or worth billions of dollars, they're very interested and we get really good feedback, but they don't want to be first, right? It's just, that's the hard part. And so you're totally right, Dushan. It's there is definitely the concern on the other side of like, if I F this up, am I gonna lose my job if Equus crashes on me, So I think that's a really interesting point that you have to keep in mind, and try not to get too frustrated when somebody maybe stonewalls you for a little while, because they're just as concerned about their job.
Yeah, no one ever got fired for buying from IBM.
Yeah, that's. But how do you get over that first hump of from 0 to 1, from no enterprise clients to one that's willing to bet on?
I think that it's kind of obvious is that you need a case study, right? You need, I think just as you have your initial investors, right, who believe in you, you also need clients who believe in you initially, right? And might not be the big clients, and some, if you're lucky, the big clients. I think it's making sure that you have a case study, you're bringing value to your clients, right? I think once you have one or two of those, I think it becomes a little bit easier to basically engage with the larger guys, because then they understand, okay, no, this is not a risk. The risk becomes less and less, right? I think it's obvious that you need case studies, but just as I said, just like having your initial investors who believe in you, you need believe, other believers in your customers who might be small, right? But I think it's giving them the value, and if as soon as you can realize the value, and and especially that's very true in our industry that me and Andy live in, which is it's big industry. Gaming is a probably like a probably like close to like a $400 billion business itself, mobile gaming, right? But it's still a very small ecosystem, right? Everyone knows everyone most of the time. So once they hear a success of one company, the news starts to spread very, very quickly, right? So case study is important. I think case study is absolutely important, and sometimes actually better, like to maybe focus on the small companies, right, that believe in you, than trying to focus on big ones, because once you prove it, the big guys will use you.
This begs the question: do you ever do anything for free?
Yes.
100%. So never for free, but not always for money.
Okay, elaborate.
So even kind of getting a signed document, signed statement of work, requires on that the person on the other end commit something. So you always need to get something in return for providing your service, but it doesn't need to be on money. There are so many other ways how you can get this quid pro quo for your services, but never give things for free.
Okay, this is a bit of difference of opinion.
Well, I guess what you define free, I think Dushan describes free as being not free. We define free as it being having something that customer feels not obligated to use, but so having like free tiers, right, would be one way of how we look at it. Usually, I think Dushan is right. Usually, you need the other party to be invested, because free means there's no incentive for the other party to use you, right? It's just so yes, I completely agree with you, Dushan, that it doesn't have to be free, but it has to be the way we see it, it has to be free to the point of service, right? So when someone uses it, they feel like it's free, they can try it out. But yes, there has to be a commitment on the other side. Say, hey, if we try it out, you've got 3 months before we start charging you, or you start putting more effort into the partnership, right?
So how do you get those commitments that maybe, in order to get a full order, you need to go through the vendor approval process or something similar? Like, how are the ways to get around that when working with bigger companies?
I think you can always start with I guess something that's a letter of intent even, right? Or a smaller contract which satisfies both parties. It doesn't have to be, what we have right now is like, let's say, a beta contract, so that allows the client to basically have, do whatever the due diligence they have to do as part of the vendor. But at the same time, they actually have, so you're not going through the whole process, you're going through a process, right? So, you can start with a smaller contract or something that's easier for them, right? Sometimes actually even easier for them to basically send you their contract, right? So because they've already gone through tons of those contracts, with other vendors. So sometimes actually say, look, because you're small and you want to try, as long as you specify in the contract that this is up for renewal for, I don't know, whenever the time frame is, protect yourself. Of course, you don't want to give up, all your everything, to your client, but there are ways of doing it. So you maybe ask them for a contract they use, right, which you can then work towards.
That's a good hint. Like,
to me, the most important is commitment of time. So if they don't give you their time, you don't have any chance of running a process. The next one is commitment of information, because unless you get internal intelligence, what's happening, you will also run into the wall. And the third one is commitment of influence, because no decision basically in larger enterprise happens in vacuum. And if the person does not influence or does not want to use that influence for your purposes, again, you don't stand a chance. So actually commitment of money comes after all these commitments are already made.
Okay, so that's good. You mentioned a lot about commitment on influence. Maybe, Andy, you worked at Yahoo. Yahoo at the time was already very, very big. Like, how do decisions in these big companies really happen? Who's deciding?
I guess it depends on the type of decision. I mean, like I said, I can't remember how many acquisitions were made in the 18 months I was there, but it was substantial. And it's very division oriented, at least it was at Yahoo, right? Because Yahoo had enough. They've got the search side, they had the content side, then they had the sort of the advertising side. So the decisions being made were certainly coming from very, very high up. I mean, we had a few VPs that would be involved in sort of the I think they acquired InterClick right before I was there. They acquired another company, a video ad network. And all those sort of came from that sort of SVP and up into the C level. So, I was, just a mid-level salesperson, but all the people that were like I reported to, they kind of knew it was happening, but it was still not, I don't think it was a very big pool of people that made those decisions at Yahoo.
So what you're saying is that very infrequently would it be that somebody at, let's say, lower level at hierarchy spots something that's interesting and then kind of passes it up until somebody acts on it. What you're saying is that things mostly happen kind of in the center, and you need to look where the center is.
Yeah, because most of these companies have corp dev, right? The guys that are there, and all they're doing is sort of just out there looking at what's in the market and what does my CEO want to expand to, and kind of looking for that. But they certainly would engage people inside of Yahoo and say, hey, does anybody have any friends that are doing some cool things or some businesses you've run across? So I think but it's still very centralized. Yeah, I mean, that's the short answer.
And just a piece of advice: never sell to corp dev. You will never sell anything.
Yeah, don't start there. That's for sure. You need to get the people that actually would use the product excited about it.
Yeah. For those more at the start of the startup path, corp dev is the part of the large companies that basically do mergers and acquisitions. And usually, yes, you don't want to start there. That's where eventually you get pulled if things get serious. So okay, we got one question from the public, a bit from a different perspective, and it is like work at the start of the career or when having an opportunity choosing between large company and smaller company. Does working in smaller company kind of give more ability to create value and to be kind of closer to action? And is that more useful than kind of big companies view?
It's a good question. I mean, Dilpesh answered it in a good way, which is there is focus that you can get at a bigger company. I don't know that it depends on what your role is, but typically it's going to be harder for you to make a true impact at an early stage in your career. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I think from a startup perspective, again, it's the idea of wearing more hats than just the one thing. And if that's interesting to you as a career opportunity, I certainly think for me, it gave me the ability to do a lot of different things as I got further and further into my career, because I didn't just do one specific role and kind of move up into that same sort of vertical inside of my career.
Yeah, I can go here with a bit of my experience. I started my career partially working for a national television house. So basically national television in journalism and similar. And the interesting thing that I noticed there is just how many problems these large organizations have. And a lot of those problems are basically unsolvable within them. And some problems are actually also interesting. And from there, I do think that even like working at larger or more dysfunctional organizations can provide a very, very interesting kind of career material. And so does working for startups from day one. As Andy is saying, multiple hats all the time does kind of train you in being very versatile. I don't know if you guys maybe then answer the question, after you are working a lot with multiple hats and maybe you get acquired, maybe via some other way you land at bigger company, how can you fit in? How can you kind of make sure that you're not trying to swim too far from your lane?
It's a really good question too.
Yeah, I think it also then depends again. There's so many dependencies on all the questions we're asking, right? Because I think it also depends on the company that kind of eventually acquires you, right? How do you fit in? It's a very interesting question. I think to me, it's important that just not to fit in. I think it's more important to make sure that you keep delivering what you believe in, right? I think the fit in will come in, right? Naturally, there are acquisitions which go bad, and a lot of times acquisitions go bad because people acquire companies because sometimes mainly for the financial value, right, and not sometimes for the product or just or they would just want a land grab, right? I think if you believe in what the company you built and the value you can bring, I think fitting in would become naturally. Again, it's I think if you focus too much on like trying to fit in, you'll never fit in, right? Because there's never a perfect company or a role.
Yeah, I always had trouble fitting in, and was always unruly. And I can't imagine that I would be just a corporate warrior.
Yeah, I think it's enjoying, right? I think if you keep enjoying what you're doing, and in a larger company, then you can, I think there's a good chance that you'll keep, you might like that place.
Okay, I think Dusan, you once was talking about the difference between managing and executing, or management and leadership, right? That management is basically managing what there is, while leadership is the primary thing is changing whatever there is. I don't know if you remember, but Tushan, you gave me that lesson.
Yeah, all big companies are almost by definition successful at what they do, and majority of their of people there are there to do more of the same. And this is the default for the company. And the company resists any change, but of course it needs to adapt over time in order to survive in the long run. So yeah, definitely you need both. You need managers who make sure that what works keep on working, but you also need leaders who introduce change and kind of adapt the company to the changed environment. So the best people are both. So great managers and inspiring leaders, but quite often, you only have managers without any inspiration whatsoever.
But does that beg a question, which is, do leaders also need to be replaced? Because you can have a change, but that change only lasts for 5 years, but then you need a new change, and maybe that leader is not right for that change, right? So, one thing, again, this is just coming from a personal experience. Working for a few companies, is sometimes you actually need to change. And when I change the leader, doesn't mean the leader, you have to get rid of the leader. The leader might not be in the right position, right? So the leader might need to go in another position, higher up, and that's also for him or her might be a time to move up, right, into a different position.
Actually, I have quite strong opinion on exactly this topic. So in order to change others, you first need to change yourself always.
Yeah.
So if you are unable to change yourself, you should be replaced.
Yeah.
I have a friend who works at a company. It's about a $40 billion market cap, but it's still believed until recently that they were a startup. And the co-founders had been running the business as kind of co-CEOs for a number of years, and the board ended up removing one of the co-CEOs. They just what I learned from my friend, hearing all the kind of complaints and things, being sort of the mid-level, this person wasn't prepared to take that business to the next stage, right? There are startup founders that are amazing at certain levels, and you get to a certain point, and Dushan is correct, like, be on the lookout. If you're at a company, and I've seen this at a number of companies that have failed that I've been at, look out for the leaders to see the ones that realize what they don't know, right? It's that idea of like, if you think you know everything and you're the leader, you typically will make some big mistakes. And this person was removed by the board because he kind of developed this culture that ended up being toxic, mostly because he wanted to treat everything like a startup, right? And a $40 billion market cap is not a startup anymore, even if you're 2 or 3 years in. That's just the way I look at it, right? And as a result, they've replaced him with somebody who's run very big companies, and she's got a totally different experience level, and suddenly she's in there making changes, right? So it's that change leadership, Andres, that you're asking about. Like, a leader and a manager are very different, and this person, he just could not get to the next step, but he also didn't realize it. He didn't have the self-realization that, hey, you know what? Maybe it is time for me, as Dilper said, to step aside and let somebody else come in. He could still be part of the company, but maybe he's not ready to be he shouldn't be CEO anymore, because that's not the type of person this company is. And again, I've noticed that in other companies. I've seen it with friends and their startups and that have grown, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced it. It's something to look out for if you're growing with a company, just to, you can sometimes see the writing on the wall if you feel like the leadership isn't there.
Yeah, I spoke with the founder of Takeaway a couple of years back, and Takeaway is probably now close to $20 billion company, and he founded it 20 years ago. So I asked him, hey, haven't you got bored like running the company for 20 years? And he said, I started this company, at that time was delivering pizzas myself. And now we are 20,000 person company. My job was completely different every 2 to 3 years. So I basically feel I have worked for 10 different companies over the past 20 years.
Maybe a tip for some of you who want to think about starting up. I think one thing I also kind of have seen is just because you're a co-founder doesn't mean that you can be a C-level, right? I think sometimes people a lot of startups think like if you're a co-founder of a company, you have to be a C-level, you have to be a CEO or CTO, right? I think I would advise that you're finding the right CTO, for example, if that was a case, it's better than finding the right CTO than just making someone CTO, right? So I think that's just one kind of tip over there is, when you're setting your companies up, co-founders, co-founders have equity and there's more vested, but sometimes there's a downside where people, a lot of startups end up, making themselves, C-level when they probably might not ready for it.
Okay. I think we've made a very interesting circle from starting with working for, let's say, blue chips, large companies, then working with, and now we're in the phase of becoming large companies. The changes that are happening. So we started to discuss the how the company changes at every junction. But maybe from your experiences, at which point the founder or feels the biggest kind of changes in the company, like maybe at which number of people or revenue or something similar?
So there's a question that when do you start to feel big? Is the question?
Or when do you feel the level has changed, that you know in a game that you got to the next level and you need to relearn things again?
Interesting. I think, it's for us, at least from Echo's standpoint, we're very at the beginning. So we're waiting for that moment. Actually, that's a good moment, right? When when you go to a place that's bigger than where you started off. Of course, that's I think for us, just for us, it's going to be how many customers. Again, I'm going to drive this comment again, which is how much value have we brought to our customers, right? And sometimes it doesn't have to be 100 customers, it could be 10 customers, right? And those could be the 10 most important customers that you're working in the industry, right? So for us is, if we can integrate or work with some of the top, any listed, top mobile gaming companies, for us, that means that we've stepped up, right? We can always find clients, we can always find customers, but the reason we built this, the fundamental reason we built it is to help the bigger companies. And if we can get out of the 200-300 bigger companies that are out in the market, we get about 5%, 10% of those customers using it. I think that would be, for us, that would be a step up in terms of, and then we know we drive the value, for those customers.
In my opinion, so every time you add a new management layer, because the company grows, your job as C-level executive completely changes, because it's a very different beast on managing so regular employees and, for example, managing managers. So at least in my experience, that was always the transition point when a new level of management was introduced.
And what changes? Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Mine's quick. I feel like, as a generalization from a startup perspective, if you read about what's happening, you just read TechCrunch and stuff, that sort of Series A to B to C, if you're taking that true investor path that people think they all need to take, right? That's when things start changing, because that could be taking 5 million or taking 50 million, and suddenly, what do you do with all of that money? Are you the person as a C-level? Are you able to handle all that? Are you able to figure out how to disperse it properly and use it properly? And certainly then deal with what the expectations are then from those investors, right? Because if you're into that Series B, Series C level, that's suddenly get into the potential unicorn conundrum where your investors may not be happy unless you've made them $1 billion or something like that, and that would be very daunting for anybody. I would say that's not had experience in that. I've never had experience in that level. So
okay. with that, we're slowly closing in. We have about 5 more minutes till we wrap. Any closing thoughts for fresh entrepreneurs navigating the space between small and large companies? Or we have covered everything?
I mean,
Maybe
I think
Andy, from your experience with Yahoo, like you were talking a lot about acquisitions, but in general, you probably have seen many interesting situations with smaller companies and how it either ended up well or bad for them when working with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a career perspective, if trying to think about how people maybe view in this panel, like I think there's value in both, right? I wouldn't say you should only go the startup route for your whole career, and I certainly would never tell somebody to just go big companies unless security, like job security and potentially your pay is all you really care about, and that's okay, right? There's some people that that's great for, but you learn a lot from both. I certainly did, and it drew me back into the startup space after being at Yahoo, as much as I really enjoyed the brand, and it was a great company to work for. They treat their employees extremely well. Better than I've ever been treated financially and sort of benefits wise, right? So that's not something to just push aside, that security and that kind of community of big companies too.
I actually have a very simple recipe. So don't pick company, pick a boss. So if you pick a great boss, it doesn't really matter if it's a small company or a big company. Regardless, you have a lot of opportunities opening up. You will have a great mentor who will open many doors for you, either through network or through learnings. So just focus who will be your boss. Don't care so much about the company.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think
maybe your thought.
Yeah, I think on my side really is, again, I come back to this, which is the focus, right? Keep your focus on whether you're a big company or a small company. I think that always comes come back to you, because if you don't have the focus, even if you're in a small company, startups are hard, right? Startups are really hard, and you get thrown a lot of things on your way, and learning how to be focused. And sometimes those are big companies that actually have training programs, to help you kind of navigate those kind of scenarios. So my tip is, if you're working for a big company, learn all the tips and take advantage of those training. Those are very useful as you start your own companies.
Okay. Thanks. I would then maybe end up with a thought, just paraphrasing Dusan, in a sense of don't worry which company you go to, worry about which boss you will have. And I think there's the flip side is as an entrepreneur, you most likely will be a boss, right? So don't just worry who is your boss, but what kind of a boss you will be. So everything that we've heard today could be applied, like so you will be able to get the best talent, the talent that wants to develop and make a difference. With that, I would really like to thank all of our guests, Dilpes Parmar, Dusan Omercevic, and Andy Ulleray. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
And see you in next panel or anything similar. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And also a big thank you to you, Andras. Real pleasure listening into this really good panel. I liked it a lot. Two things I heard and I had to smile a little bit about was, number one, no one was ever fired buying from IBM. Okay, that's a big one. That's a good learning. That's up to you to decide. And number two, I quite like the idea of, well, pick the right boss. I was expecting someone to also mention purpose a little more, but then again, I'm curious. Andras, maybe last question to you. What's maybe the one thing you have the feeling a lot of first-time founders kind of totally underestimate? We're just talking about the early phases, and I always know there's like one or two pieces people totally overlook, totally underestimate. What's that?
Time. How much time it will take?
You mean they're not going to be rich, like just the idea and someone brings a lot of money and then they just exit within 2 days?
it's not even about time to exit. It's even time for first steps, time to first customer, time to have something that works. Like it always takes more time than expected.
That's a great tip. So always extend the timeline a lot. No, you will not go viral
No, you
overnight.
have to be optimistic. You have to be optimistic.
Of course, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Gentlemen, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. Stay tuned, and we're going to move on to our next panel as soon as we've rolled the intro.
It is time to rethink and to realign. Learn and get inspired.
Hey guys,
Prepare your questions and enjoy this insightful Podim DX
so,
panel.
looking forward to meet you in person at some time as well.
Yep, same here.
Yes, I think we've improvised well.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was great, Andres.
Super. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure and interesting.
Yeah.
And
Really.
thank you very much as well. It's been a pleasure listening in to you. And now we're going to go over to our next panel. And that panel is called Experiment, Validate, Optimize, and Repeat. Sounds about right. Let's find out what this whole panel is about. And without any further ado, I'd like to meet the host of the next panel. And his name is Rodrigo de Alvarenga. Now, that's a very promising name. He describes himself as a startup grinder, angel investor, venture builder, mentor, board member, entrepreneur, professor, and as well, he's passionate about leadership. Now, brother, you've put the expectation bar that high. Rodrigo, how are you doing tonight?
Well, thank you, Daniel, for introducing me. I'm really well. It's a pleasure to be here at Podim DX 2021. I guess we're going to have a very interesting discussion on how to venture builder companies, startups out of a problem, right?
Great. And we're looking forward to learning all of that within the next rough hour. Look, panel is yours. Take it away. I'll be listening in. I'm just muting myself, and stage is yours. Enjoy, and thank you very much.
Thank you. So before anything else, I guess we're going to introduce one of our guests who's going to present a business that he has built in order to very curious to tackle a very curious. Ziga is the co-founder of and he's gonna show.
Something is wrong with the connection. Can you hear me? Because I can't really hear you well. Hello?
Yes, Ziga.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here now. It won't be just me. Kyle will also join me with the presentation. We'll be short. We just want to give an intro as agreed so people understand what we're talking about later on.
Okay, welcome, Kyle. It's a pleasure to have you here with us as well. So feel free to introduce us to Buddy, and then we can move forward.
So let me introduce myself first. I'm Giga, one of the 3 co-founders of BirdBuddy. Before BirdBuddy, I co-founded a civic tech NGO called Today is a New Day, which won 3 Google D&I grants, among other things, and is still very active today. Although it seems a bit disconnected, the time at a non-profit with close to 0 marketing dollars was actually a great exercise for understanding online communities and free digital marketing channels. However, prior to that, I did work in the industry. I worked as a director of product development at Outfit 7. Among other games, I also worked on My Talking Hank. And the main character was on the mission to collect photos of as many animals as possible. And I only now see how that might have unconsciously inspired BirdBuddy. I'm joined here today by co-founder Kyle Buzzard. Kyle, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Kyle Buzzard. I'm based in the United States. My background is actually in industrial design. So I consulted for about 10 years in Silicon Valley and then in Chicago. Ton of amazing projects along the way. Was the lead designer for the Google Chromecast project, a lot of Google X ventures. Did a lot of work in kind of video IoT and telepresence space with Logitech, Cisco, and the original Dropcam, which became Nest. So in 2017, I co-founded Proto Ventures, which is a studio that invests human resources and capital into new projects and ideas and startups. So it's pretty amazing last year meeting Giga and Francie, hearing the original idea and kind of the combination of Giga's experience gamifying apps and creating excellent experiences, mine with IoT and camera devices, and Francie with software development was kind of the perfect ingredients for us to create Bird Buddy. So for those that aren't familiar, it's a smart bird feeder that takes photos, recognizes species using AI, and then puts those into a gamified app where you can create collections. So you can kind of think about it like the Pokemon Go for birds in your own backyard.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. So the organizers of the conference asked us to present our path to finding a product market fit, and we'll try to walk you through the process. It was basically a bunch of gut feelings, followed by a lot of validation tests. But I'll start with the gut feeling part. So there are hundreds of online communities on Reddit and Facebook that are gathered around bird photography, and we kind of knew that, and we were following some of them. I mean, just look at these. Half a little wattle bird. I'll try and get a picture of the other half tomorrow. So it's really notoriously hard to take photos of birds, and people are even drawing internet comics about birds always just flying out of the frame, right? But while the biggest enthusiasts are spending thousands of dollars for the equipment just to get that perfect photo, the super telephoto lens is not the only answer. I realized that when I saw the video of a seagull stealing a GoPro camera. The guy was an instant internet sensation. People loved it because the angle was so fresh, I think. So this was kind of the first time internet watched a bird take a selfie, right? So I thought there must be a better way of doing this. I mean, you all know that animals are the stars of the meme world. But have you noticed that none of the most popular templates is based on professional photos of cute animals? So what the grumpy cat, awkward moment seal, unpopular opinion puffin, and dodgy, and even that cheeky seagull that stole the GoPro camera have in common is, I believe, this novelty factor. So people are tired of perfect stock photos of cute animals, right? With this in mind, we kind of planned and believed that there is a really good chance that people will want to edit and share the footage from their bird bodies. That virality is kind of built into the product. We then learned that there is also a market big enough for this. So 57 out of 328 million Americans feed birds. But what's even more exciting is the fact that almost half of others say that they might start feeding them in the future if someone made it more fun. That part was just added by me. It was not in the research. So yeah, just to give you a better idea of the sheer market size, because it surprised us as well. About $700 million is spent on bird feeders every year in US, and about $3 billion on bird seeds. There was another thing that made us think that we have something special. Basically, the market of smart home devices is very crowded, pun intended. So we coined the term fun home as the not the opposite, but as a complementary to the smart home, right? So the vast majority of products on the market are, I'd say, very utilitarian. And we like to think that BirdBuddy is to other smart home devices what mobile games are to mobile apps. It doesn't pretend to be something you need, it's just something you want. So that is also something about the ever-present human drive to collect, be it stickers with football players, post stamps, or even Pokemons. People from all over the world, of all genders and of all ages, are basically and have always been devoting great amounts of time, money, and energy into making and maintaining and curating collections. Psychologists believe that it's a continuation of our hunting, gathering instincts. So today it's not necessary to gather resources to survive. So our instinctual drive to collect finds other expressions, such as gaming. So since we knew that most committed bird watchers are already keeping diaries of their sightings, we believe that the collection mechanics should be at the heart of BirdBuddy. And we very much put it there. So now the part with validation tests, when like this was the idea, this is why we thought it's good, but we had to test it, right? So the mom test is a great book. I recommend to all of you. I guess you've probably all read it. I mean, it's a classic, but it's just the best thing when it comes to usability tests, because it kind of teaches you that your mom will always think you're the smartest, right? And tell you so. So you might want to validate your ideas with other people. It's really important to not show your landing pages to your friends, because it will just skew your statistics and your results. So you need to basically show things to strangers, because if you'll be showing it to people that they know, that you know them, you can be pretty sure that they will lie to you. So we created the first landing page of BirdBuddy, and we didn't share it with any friends or anyone. We just pretty much launched a Facebook ad and showed it to a bunch of strangers. So it was just a presentation, like a simple product page, a one-pager, which explained the idea, and there was this email forum added to the bottom. It said something like, we're launching on Kickstarter in a few months. Subscribe to secure the early bird offer, or something like that. And like, we didn't really want to collect emails at this point, to be honest, but we just wanted to learn how much we would be paying for emails if we decided that we're going to proceed with the project. So we kind of researched and tried to reach out to all the colleagues and friends in the industry, and learned that email should cost us somewhere from 1 to 3 euros, right? And so we had the benchmark, and we wanted to see like how our product resonates with a quite wide Facebook audience. I think we targeted more than 200 million Americans with the first ad. It was just one ad, one single copy, one single visual, no split tests, nothing. So we just turned it on, threw 500 euros on it, and went to bed. The next day, we woke up to this. Email ended costing us less than half a euro, like somewhere around 40 cents in the end. And that was about 10 times better than the benchmark from the industry. That was a really good sign. We were on the right track, but you know, it was just emails. So we wanted to dig further. Yeah, these were the comments under the very first ad. It really, I mean, I'd be lying if I'd say that it didn't warm our hearts a lot, because like immediately the feedback was just full of emojis of love and hearts and the stuff dreams are made of. Looks like I know what to get you for Christmas. Like all comments were pretty much in line with this sentiment. So that also, of course, made us think that that there might be something interesting. So we then compared the pre-launch lead, I mean the conversion rate on the pre-launch page, like how many people that visited the website actually ended up signing up to our newsletter. And we again compared it with the benchmarks from the industry, and we here like these results really blew us away, because we saw that each fifth person actually that landed on it was cold traffic, right? But each fifth person that landed on the website subscribed to an email, and these weren't our friends and our moms. This was like a huge audience on Facebook ads, 200 million Americans. So yeah, that seemed like we're on. I mean, it did make us very optimistic, but still we weren't sure if these are just emails. Because people just like the concept. They're entertained by the idea, but they didn't know anything about the price, right? They wouldn't know if they didn't know it costed like $200, which is like a 10x of a regular bird feeder. So you need to keep in mind that a regular bird feeder costs about $20, and of course they were signing up on emails because they probably had no idea how expensive it would be. So we wanted to test that too. What we did, we took the same landing page, just removed the part where people could subscribe to newsletters and replaced it with a simple Braintree checkout. And like we set the price, and we again ran ads to see if anybody would buy it. You need to keep in mind that at that time we had zero social proof. There was no product design. Kyle wasn't with us yet, and it was just a rendering Francie did by himself basically, and there were no specs on the website. If you googled bird body, nothing came up. Like it was impossible to pass the smell test. But still, like on that experiment, we basically generated $1,300 for $200 ad spend. So ROAS more than 6. And at that point, we decided that it's time to talk to some angel investors. And I'll now hand the mic back to Kyle.
Yeah, so at that point, again, we had kind of proven that people would be willing to spend $200, but how could we validate that $200 is the right price and that features that we could provide for that would get people really excited? So we wanted to test, is there a better sweet spot for the price and the feature set that we could offer so that we could really kind of get people excited and get that all aligned with people's expectations. So what we did is we actually used our leads that we had generated and sent out this survey, which is more or less kind of a price configurator, where we allowed people to adjust things like how good the quality of the camera would be, how long the battery would last, a variety of different features. And as you would adjust those things, the price would go up or go down. And what we saw was a lot of people just really wanted the top specs, and they were willing to spend the $200 or even more than that to get these features that they really thought were important. So that really validated for us that not only would they spend the money, but that was a right price point for what we could offer to them. So from there, it was kind of, okay, what's the next step, right? We could, find the features that people really want, but can we build them? And could we actually offer those with a cost of goods that makes sense for our margins as a business? So at that point, what I really think is important is finding an excellent manufacturing partner and understanding the feasibility of the project. So that's what we did next. We used all of the insights that we had gained from that previous experiment with the feature sets and all of the surveys and feedback that we'd gotten to date. And we essentially put together a product requirements document that we sent out and started having conversations with a variety of engineering and development firms. One, for feedback on our PRD, but also just to test the feasibility and understand kind of what the full, turnkey development cost would be for this, what people's expectations for timelines would be, and really just kind of try to discover any gotchas in the hardware world, because it's, there's the old saying, hardware is hard. And we want to make sure that we're seeing everything in our way and uncovering any kind of roadblocks or traps that maybe we weren't thinking of initially. So, and then on the manufacturing front, I think one of the things that makes hardware so challenging is just, everybody has the horror stories of manufacturing delays and mishaps and defects and all of these things. And, it's bound to happen. And I think one of the things that can help a company be successful is forging a really solid relationship with a manufacturing partner very early in the process. And a lot of times the manufacturers that look really great on paper aren't really the ones that end up wanting to work with you or giving you the most attention or being really interested in your product. So it's really a process of making sure that and validating that you can find and commit a really interested and engaged manufacturing partner that you can build a relationship with and trust to go through that process and make sure that you can deliver on the promises that you're putting out to your backers. So from there, we felt really good about that process. We landed on an amazing manufacturing partner. At that point, we really wanted to lock in the design, look and feel. And so we continued on leveraging our leads that we had cultivated. And this kind of goes to the idea of nurturing leads as well, right? We found that the more that we engaged with these people in email, the more likely they were going to be to end up probably purchasing because they felt more engaged. So so we started testing things. Hey, Giga, you're sharing your screen. Thanks. Yeah, so we started testing things as far as like design concepts, something modern versus something familiar. That helped lead into a final design. There's all kinds of features that we also developed. If you go to the next slide, we tested colors. We tested accessories. We got a ton of feedback that was just invaluable from our potential customers and email leads. So that really helped through that process and kind of helped validate that people resonated with the design, and it was something that was really universally loved by all the people that were engaged with us at that point. So we talked about lead nurturing. The next validation was really, okay, before we go and raise a lot more money and invest into a Kickstarter campaign and invest in email leads, we really wanted to understand and get some data on what percentage of that list would actually convert. And that would give us a really good sense of the actual costs and how much we could spend on marketing and how much it would make sense to raise funds to do so. So in the next slide, you'll see we actually put out to our email list an additional discount, or we're calling it the deposit program, where we offered people to put in $20 to save an additional amount once we went to Kickstarter. And that was amazing because it validated roughly 10% of our email list was going to actually convert. It also generated about $50K in funds to reinvest back into more marketing. So that really gave us a jump start. It proved to our investors that, hey, we've got something here. We've got some traction. People are putting in their credit cards at this point. And basically whatever money that we can spend on marketing, we'll get a really good return. So yeah, at that point, we had kind of all of the ingredients in place. We had the manufacturing partner, we had our costs and data, everything kind of lined up and proven. So it was time to launch and really see if it would be as big as we thought it could be. So we launched, and yeah, we ended up raising, I think, about 5 million USD in Kickstarter, and continue to raise on In-Demand and Indiegogo right now. And it's been an exciting few months.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for sharing with us all the journey, like step by step, very interesting. Well, as a venture builder myself, with more than 10 years working with startups in different scenarios, like from Brazil, Latam, US, different places in Europe, also the Middle East and North Africa. I would say that My first question to you guys is basically to you, Kyle. As a venture builder, what are the main all the journey that you just described to a regular startup trying to start from a problem and moving forward basic business model? I mean, trying to build, to validate, looking for an accelerator, then angel investors, seed, pre-seed, whatever. So do you see any differences, any relevant differences?
You broke up a little bit at the beginning of the question. Could you repeat the first part?
So I mean, as a venture builder yourself, how do you compare the way you have handled, both of you, the journey compared to like a startup being launched right now, trying to keep up with all the stages that they need to go through? So are there any relevant differences?
Yeah, I think in general, every startup is different, right? The team makeup is different. The skill sets that you have immediately available is always different. I think in Bird Buddy's case, there was, a shared desire among all of us that everything that we did was data driven and that we could prove that our hypotheses were correct. I think in a lot of startups, that might not exist, and even others that I've been involved in don't take that approach necessarily. It's more of a let's use our gut feeling and raise money on personality and connections and stuff. And I think what's been amazing about this journey and what we've done so far together as a team is just the openness and transparency and kind of objectiveness put into the thought and exercises that we've done, making sure that we're not just being emotional about it, that there's real data behind our decision making and that we're doing things kind of tactically as an approach to go through these gates. So I think you've probably seen wild differences like that as well. And so I very much appreciate how we've been able to do it here so far.
So, in your opinion, Ziga, how do you see the differences as the co-founder of a startup that went through, let's say, a very professional journey to validate the problem and the market before anything else, right? It's quite common to see startups, exactly as you said, Kyle, trying to launch their own ideas over a problem that sometimes they don't know that much or not nor that well, and then they have this learning curve that happens later on, and investors will have to fund all this learning curve until they get to a point in which they have an actual business. So by doing what you have done, you have first proved if there was a market, then you proved there was customers interested in buying your product. Then you have moved forward towards fundraising funds. How do you see this experience, Ziga, from your co-founder perspective?
To be brutally honest, I've been like not doing that until Bird Buddy in all of my projects. Like I always just started working on something because I was so passionate, wanted to try it out, wanted to start like developing it and like worked on it in a year, and then only then learned that no one wants it, right? Or not enough people want it, or like they're not willing to pay, or so like I'm not, it's just not fair of me to lecture other people now how they should always first do these validation tests, um, because it took me a long time to realize that this is how you should begin. Sometimes it's just like too hard to not start working on something if you're too passionate, and I can totally understand that too. However, I mean, there were a bunch of experiences I had and I didn't mention in my introduction, but I started everything from a wooden game company to a online service which for editing video online, and like all of the, like a lot of stuff which just didn't go through this process, right? When I just started building and then realized I can't find the audience, or it's too hard, or you need too much money to pull it off, or like I had a few bitter experiences until I realized you should start from the other side. So now I actually do suggest this to everyone, because I believe that this really forces you to understand why you're doing this, who you're doing this for. Are they out there? Is there a lot of them? Are they willing to pay money? I mean, it's just, these are the questions you need to answer before you invest the development hours, right, into any kind of project. But I don't know, I guess you just need to go from the other end a few times to believe this, because I've been told this the very first time I started something like that, I should start with this kind of tests, but I was just too young and too passionate, I guess. And even like if I would, I'm thinking right now, if like some of those ideas that I really loved and thought they were amazing, if I would run a validation test like that and it would fail, I wouldn't believe it, right? I would doubt the methodology, right? I would still keep doing it. So I guess it takes some level of maturity to do that.
Well, that's first of all very interesting that you are posing the argument like this. The lack of maturity sometimes for entrepreneurs, it's gonna make them pursue a journey that is sometimes not actually real. They might be pursuing a dream, right? That's what you are saying.
Sorry, I lost you for a second, but I think.
Well, I guess what I said was that what you're saying is sometimes entrepreneurs pursue a journey much more connected to the idea itself other than a real problem. That being so as I was saying, so
Koliko je oni 8? Minuta ih.
There we go.
They realized that they weren't muted.
yeah, sorry guys, sorry everybody. So going back again, entrepreneurs, sometimes they don't realize they are pursuing, instead of an idea, it's much more like a dream, because they're going for something that is not proved, either because they haven't proved there is a need or nor if there is a market. So Kyle, based on first of all, why a venture builder instead of, for example, an accelerator? Why did you choose to become like a venture builder? What was the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I get personally really excited about new ideas. I think a lot of people in creative professions tend to do that. And the thought of committing to something, and doing only one thing for the rest of your life is frightening. I think there's a lot of passion around the fuzzy front end of things, right? And I think from my perspective, I get most excited about crafting a brand story and figuring out the core value proposition of a new idea from the very beginning, more so than I do figuring out how to help and assist scaling and things like that. So I think as far as Podim Ventures and what we're excited about as an organization, it's really kind of helping empower entrepreneurs and people, really early stage startups, putting them in a good position to understand how to do validation tests, to understand how to craft vision, mission, values, even things as far as kind of coaching at a personal level to make sure that, as the previous panel was talking about, like, how do you become a good boss? That's a new experience for a lot of entrepreneurs. So I think there's just, you know, myself personally and a lot of the folks that I'm surrounded by really have a passion for that early stage and feel like they can add the most value there, just directly with entrepreneurs and with startups.
Okay. Got it. So at the end, do you think that by approaching the process of building a new venture as a venture builder instead of, for example, as a regular entrepreneur would do, what do you think are the main gains in terms of either time or money or curve? What are the main gains based on your experience so far?
As far as what we're able to offer as a venture studio? I'll take that as a question. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, and you know, especially first-time entrepreneurs that haven't done it before, I think for the most part, folks lack the network and connections that are so powerful that enable second, third, fourth-time entrepreneurs to build a new venture, right? And so I think one of the main goals and things that we're passionate about is kind of bringing a network to a new founder, kind of being able to plug in and meet people and fill some of those technical roles that are so hard to find if you're not already immersed in an environment or a community like that. So, you know, being able to fill in as interim, you know, technical co-founder or fill in operational roles, admin, back-end, legal type stuff. There's just a lot of things that it's really hard for like a single founder to do all on their own while they're trying to do everything else and validate things and. So I think the mission and the idea, the value add really is, hey, how can we fill some of those roles, bring a lot of people that are passionate about an idea to a project for an amount of time to get you to that next level and help build out that team and stuff. So I think that's really kind of the value that gets added there. And it's really just about kind of filling the gaps and enabling kind of that ability to get top talent and pull from a really excellent community of amazing people, you know, without having to have done it before. I think that's going to unlock a lot more opportunities around the globe, honestly, for entrepreneurs to get their start, right? I mean, all the pieces are out there. It's being able to put them together in the right order and knowing where to find those pieces. That's a real challenge. Rodrigo, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Ziga, thank you. Ziga, what do you think are the next steps for you guys?
I mean, we are currently totally focused on delivering what we advertised, right? So we are with basically working around the clock, both on hardware and the software development part. And we are planning to keep doing so basically until autumn. Then I don't know. I mean, there's, as you might have heard, the supply chain. There's a perfect storm with the broken supply chain and things like that. So we're not completely sure like what will be the day, the month, even when we will ship, when we will launch. And even after launch, we are planning a few versions of, I mean, a few updates to the app very early after launch. So we'll be very much busy with production. However, if your question refers to product development, right, to where we see BirdBody in after that, we have a few. I mean, we see a few different paths ahead. We'll probably try all of them again, validate, test, repeat, right? So what we really want is learn to deliver a digital experience which is like also fun without the feeder, because 3 billion 3 billion people live in cities, right? And they don't have access to backyards, and they cannot hang bird feeders. And with so many bird bodies connected to the network, it's a huge source of really cool content. And we are thinking of ways to create experiences also fully functional and still fun, also for people who didn't buy the feeder. That's one thing we're exploring. And on the hardware side, we're also we have a lot of ideas. We basically want to gamify the whole backyard, but we want to start small. I mean, it's not small. It already kind of blew up, but we really want to focus on one thing now. And we believe that focus is kind of saying no to 100 good ideas, right?
True, that's true. Kyle, tell us a little bit more about Prota Ventures, as well as I have seen that you have had investments into blockchain, into a company called Figment, another one called Vendor Hack. So Vendor Hawk, sorry, and Birdie Buddy. That means completely different businesses, completely different industries. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so at the core, we're essentially a network of startup people, entrepreneurs, investors, developers. It initially started just as really just a completely decentralized loose network of people who would just get together and go fishing or skiing or hanging out, right? Just being able to have a tribe and talk to other folks when you're out on your own is really important, to have that sense of community. And I think for a lot of people, it was walking away from a day job at a corporation and kind of missing the camaraderie. And where do you find that, right? So that's kind of how it originally started. Along the way, people just started talking about new ideas together, started forming new companies together. They were looking for sources of funding, so we were putting together special purpose vehicles from our angel networks and folks in the community that have been hanging out and said, sure, I'll put $5,000 into that pot, or a range of funding options. But that's really where it started. And then by the end of 2017, we decided to formalize a few businesses around a hypothesis that we could get better returns from investments if we were actually operationally involved in some way, as a group, as a network, as partners. So the way that we actually structured it is we have, it's essentially a holdings company. We have a studio that works for large enterprises and companies that already have revenue that are looking for design and development services. We take a very small margin on those to try to keep the costs down because we are decentralized. But we take 10% of the profits and put that into a fund that we call Core One, that we're investing into validation experiments for folks in the network that kind of need that almost pre-friends and family money. They say, I have an idea, I'd love to run some ads, like the very first test that Bird Buddy did. There's a lot of that kind of stuff happening in a network like ours. So we're able to just take that Core One fund that we've kind of skimmed from large enterprises and use that to help people kind of get their first start, with cash to run Facebook ads or build a prototype or whatever they need to do. We then also raised a fund for a little bit larger investments, 25 to 50K typically range. As those things start to pick up traction, then we have a vehicle to kind of be one of the first people to get that fundraising ball rolling for folks that are kind of starting their probably pre-seed fundraising. So, and then essentially a number of us kind of pooled together and said, hey, let's try to figure out how we can all just de-risk and have fun and work together on new ideas, and pool all of this stuff together and be able to use this cash from Core One in our fund to help elevate those things. So that's essentially what we did. It's a group of folks that are all working together. Some people full-time, some people just part-time, still at their day jobs. It's a fun network. There's a lot of new ideas spinning up and a lot of support from everybody just jumping in and kind of providing help. And we have that vehicle through the Core One Fund What I didn't mention there is that people that actually work on the projects, that 10% that we're putting into the pot is actually based on the percentage of work that they did on the project. So as an incentive, like you get paid to work on the project for an enterprise, you're also becoming an investor into this core fund that's investing into new ideas. So we're trying to essentially spread the wealth, and instead of like the investors at the top or the people that own the company making all of the returns, you know, we're recognizing that almost all of the value is being created by the people actually doing the work. So we wanted to create a way that they could benefit from capital gains events and exits and things like that from those very first investments.
Did it happen like by chance, or it was like organized from the beginning?
It's taken a few years to refine the model and work out structure and legal and all of the things, and it's still a work in progress, like everything is, right? But I think, you know, at the foundation, we want to see humans flourish, and I think all of the projects that we're working on, we really want to have you know, a positive impact on the world and in people's lives, and help improve the lives of not only customers, but of the entrepreneurs that are coming up with these amazing ideas.
That's nice. How about you, Ziga? How do you compare the experience of working with Prata Ventures and all of the team that they have there available, and all the resources, not just money, I mean people, knowledge, etc., camaraderie, etc., compared to the previous experiences you had?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We're really grateful to have found them, right? So many things we don't know and can't do. They always help us find the person who can jump in and do their magic, and I think that's priceless.
Got it. So one of the things that I can say is that I've been working as a venture builder, and also researching about it, and over the years, what I end up learning is that venture building is like I would say that it's a more industrialized manner and a more organized manner to structure new ventures in all senses. Starting with the validation of the problem, then going to validating the market, and afterwards moving all the way up until you have a business to launch and a product to sell, right? So over the years, I also have encountered some evidence that even for those investing, or if you as you have an investment fund that is compounded by your own guys, right, and friends and people around you, venture builders end up having a better, let's say, return on investment over time. So would you agree with this? Would you disagree with this? What are the evidences that you have seen so far?
Oh, that's a hard question. I have no doubt that for some investors, you know, coming up with a formula that works and focusing in on, you know, a category and applying that formula can be really effective. I mean, there's evidence of that for sure. I think from our perspective, it's really about the humans involved, and there's so many variables, as you know, with new ventures, luck, timing, who knows. We haven't. It would be amazing and very efficient to be able to apply a formula and put people through a process. That would make our lives much more simple. But I think you can't account for the wild cards and the people like Giga and Francie, right, that are incredible human beings and have this passion and drive to not only build the product, but find and hire and recruit the talent and retain them and treat people well. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things in a formula that could be overcome by human interaction and by the drive to overcome challenges. And I think as long as we can support each other in that, we know there's going to be curveballs. I think we're more in the boat of let's figure out how we can survive this together versus apply a formula.
Nice. So at the end, what you're saying is basically that the human factor is the most important in all this, right?
That's what I believe.
Yeah. So I guess we have found the same answer after all, because at the end, from the experience I have collected all over the years, is that human capital is the only singular factor you have in a new venture. Everything else can be copied either beforehand or while you are launching or in the very next day, right? The only thing you can't copy and paste is basically people. And that makes
I completely agree. And it's, you know, it's the priorities that need to align as well, right? I mean, I think from the beginning, we recognized we're not going to be able to patent our way to success, right? IP is a part of the strategy, but like we all agreed that creating an amazing brand and experience is going to be our moat for the most part, right? And so I think there's a lot of those foundational decisions too as a team that you can align on that can help determine success and drive some of the strategies that kind of give indicators that this, you know, we're moving in the right direction and that the returns are going to be really good as far as how we're investing our time and capital. So,
how about you, Ziga? What, based on your own experience, how important is the human factor?
I mean, yeah, I tend to agree. It's a must, because nothing, I mean, one, like on a hackathon over a weekend, human factor might not be that important, but like even, I mean, every business ever takes time, right? Even, I mean, at BirdBody things are really happening fast, but still, before we're ready to exit or something, it's a lot of time will pass, and we spend the whole days together. And if you don't get along well, I don't think that's even possible. It's just not possible. So I think it's not that it's something that's good to have. It's something that's I mean, it's a blocker if you don't have this basic chemistry, I believe. Because once, like, it's, of course you can be professional and you can like jump on a Zoom call with someone you don't really like because but you have to like do business with them. Of course you can do that, but that's just not where the magic happens, right? You need to also like want to chat with this person in the middle of the night, or like on Sunday, or like you just need to be good friends, right? I don't think there's any other way to go about this, honestly.
Awesome. So, in your opinion, Ziga, based on all that you have learned in this journey, compared to the previous attempts you had, as well as with what you have been seeing from other entrepreneurs' experience, what would be like the three most important advices you have for them?
So yeah, obviously from the presentation we had, it's just like validate your idea, show it to people, show it to strangers, measure the response. That's number one. Number two, don't be afraid to let things go. Like even if they seem like they're good ideas and it turns out they're not as good as you might have believed. That's something that I found really hard. That's why I'm bringing it up. But you need to like to learn to let it go, right? So you create some software and then you learn that it's not something that you want to like keep spending your time on. So yeah, it's just some like one more abandonware. It's not something to cry about, right? Like life is too short for products, for building products that don't excite you and don't find this response with the audience, like with the audience. So yeah, test things out, learn to let things go, and understand what you don't know and find people who know it, right? I think that's a big one. Also, a lot of times, I mean, like as a young, like when I first tried to build products, I wanted to do everything by myself, and looking back, I just see how silly that was. You cannot know everything, and you're an amateur in everything, but that one thing that you really care about. So for every other, find people who rock it, right? That would be. I think that a lot of founders like want to just do everything by themselves, and I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Great. So how about you, Kyle? Could you give us and all the audience like three pieces of advice from a co-founder perspective and another three from a venture builder perspective?
Oh, wow. Yeah, from a co-founder perspective, I think acknowledge that what you're getting yourself into is going to take time and it's going to be challenging. And so there's a lot of ideas that you could choose to pursue. I'd say number one, just reflect long and hard on if that's something that you're going to remain interested in, if it's a problem that you're passionate about solving, you know, in the long term, because it is a commitment, right? As a co-founder in a business. And so it has to be the right idea, and it has to be something that you're interested in pursuing long term, because it's going to take a while. Yeah, I think second, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to try to tap into networks. And I think, you know, if your intentions are good and you're a nice person, I think you'll find people are really willing to help. I've been helped so many times throughout my career, and you know, people have just been extremely generous and gracious as far as requests and for introductions and for whatever. So I'd say, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to folks, even if you think they're just beyond who might respond to you. Just try. You never know. From a ventures perspective, I don't know. I still don't really consider myself an investor, to be honest. I'm passionate about building things, and capital and investment is a part of that. It's a tool. I think, you know, again, if you're getting into investing and you're thinking about investing your time, if you don't have money, which is completely legit way to invest, right? Again, just think about what are the potential returns here? Is this a good use of my time? Could I be adding more value some other way? And if it's a good fit as far as how you can add value strategically or with your time or with your capital, I think just don't be afraid to go all in and you know, make those investments and do everything that you can to try to make those successful.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Kyle. So it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you, to host both of you here, to get to know more about Birdie Buddy and also about Prota Ventures and all the journey that you have shared together. Thank you very much for sharing with us. To all those who are watching, thank you for being here with us. Welcome to Podim DX 2021. And now I guess our friend Daniel has something to say.
That's right. And I have to say thank you very much to the panel, and thank you very much, Rodrigo, for hosting this panel. We learned a lot. I learned a lot. And it's always fun to listen. Some things you know, some things are always good to know. And yeah, very much love the passion here. So thank you very much. And I believe it's not just me listening in, but I believe also Urban is also listening in. Is that right, buddy?
Yep, absolutely right. Till the last minute, lessons learned all the time, interesting advices. So super great to hear. Both talks were great. Both sessions were really exciting. And also, there's a special thing about the second panel. So, the bird body is also the finalist of the Slovenian Startup of the Year award. That will compete for the really prominent title, Slovenian Startup of the Year 2001. So if you're eager to see who the all the rest and 4 finalists are, feel free to join us on Wednesday at 10 at Studio 2. Yeah, exciting times.
That's good to know. So how was your first day today, Urban? What was your...
I mean, it was exciting, especially because it was like a massive pitching demo day in between 1 and 7. So it was like really, a great effort of all the team and really a lot of interesting startups pitching there. So we have from 121 now down to 10. Those 10 semifinalists will present to a separate jury tomorrow at 10. So if in any case, if you missed, who these 10s are and you want to, get to know them, a hint for the investors, maybe tomorrow at 10, you will see them in presentations live on stage 2. So it was super interesting to see who they are, what they do, and why they convinced the jury to deserve their seat in the semifinals.
That sounds promising. And maybe after we kind of recap today, let's have a bit of an outlook to tomorrow, because you said already we'll be able to meet some of the top 10 startups who will be reduced to 5 for the day after. What else is going to happen tomorrow? I know, I have a couple of program blocks coming up, but what have you got in store?
So tell me, how much time do we have to go all the...
I believe 37 seconds.
No, we'll start at 9 with really warming up. Then at 9:30 there's the official kickoff of the event. At 10 the 3 parallel program session starts basically. So we green tech and circular economy, really exciting, 2 hours packed with interesting founders. Then we have the semifinals at 10 in another slot, and also the presentation of creative startups in the third track. So packed with all the interesting things. First 2 hours from 10 to 12. After the lunch break, again, the interesting topics like health tech, fintech, Growth Academy, corporate innovation. So it will be a lot of interesting content tomorrow. So if today there was only from 8 to 10 these two really interesting panels, to imagine those 2 hours like on steroids tomorrow.
Well, I think without any further ado, there's only 2 more things to say, in my opinion. And that's number 1, more or less kind of close the day today. And number 2, have a good night's sleep to be fit for tomorrow. How about that?
I will. Thank you very much. And same to you. And see you tomorrow.
Thank you all. Good night and take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.